You've quoted General Milley calling Donald Trump a fascist. You yourself have not used that word to describe him. Let me ask you tonight, do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do.
Oh.
Yes, I do.
Oh.
And I also believe that the people who know him best on this subject should be trusted. Again, look at their careers.
I think
these are not,
as a rule of thumb, if you have a presidential administration and everybody that works for you says you're a fascist loser, you should probably listen to them.
The highest roles.
Dude, there's a lot to unpack here. They are putting her feet to the flame in a way that the male candidates do not get. I'll be honest about this. I feel like she's being a little vanilla. She's definitely not being combative like she was with Brett Baer, which I think is a good move because obviously she doesn't want to be combative to the voters. You know, and some of these questions I feel like are actually fair, but she's definitely trying to straddle a couple of lines, but she did make a few bold statements about Trump being a fascist. She made a bold statement about the filibuster. And she's definitely being a little bit evasive because she knows she's being baited. She is being baited all over the place. I'm kind of giving Kamala Harris credit because she's in a hostile space being grilled with very feisty, pinpointed questions. She's being baited to turn on Joe Biden, to make a mistake in her defense of Palestinians, or take a stand against anti-Semitism, or why didn't you do more as the vice president, throw Joe Biden under the bus. They are coming at her. Oh, do you pray? What's your biggest weakness? And who the asks that question? That's some woman shit, right? That what's your weakness question? Like, that's fucking bullshit. Nobody ever asks a man what's your biggest weakness. That's some fucking misogyny at play with that question. It was, dude. Anderson Cooper is putting a lot of screws to her, both with the questions and with his follow-up. So nobody's going to be able to accuse her of getting a softball interview.
With the Supreme Court being plagued with issues, would you be in favor of expanding the court to, say, 12, so each justice has only one circuit court other than Chief Justice to assist in making judgments more balanced?
Well, to your point, there is no question that the American people increasingly are losing confidence in the Supreme Court. And in large part because of the behavior of certain members of that court.
Because they're taking money
rulings,
and plane flights
the Dobbs
and
taking away
giving Trump a fucking prostate massage.
50 years, protecting a woman's right to make decisions about her own body. So I do believe that there should be some kind of reform of the court, and we can study what that actually looks like. But I do believe. But again, let's just, while you raise the point of the court, understand that, again, in 13 days, the American people will decide who is the next president of the United States. In 13 days, you will decide who is sitting in the Oval Office on January 20th. And on one hand, you have in Donald Trump someone who has increasingly proved himself to be unstable, and who, as we have established and the people close to him have established, he is unfit to serve. Somebody who, on January 20th, you can be sure, will spend full time, like we know, and we've seen the image mentally of him sitting in the dining room off of the Oval Office, watching for hours as people violently attack the Capitol. You can be sure, because he has said he would weaponize the Department of Justice to go after his political enemies, that you can look at a Donald Trump in the White House after January 20th, sitting in that Oval Office, plotting his revenge. He has talked about the enemies within. We haven't even raised that subject, Anderson. The enemies within.
Dude,
He's talking about the
That's
American
some bullshit.
people.
The enemies within?
He's talking about
that is some
journalists,
bullshit.
Judges, nonpartisan election officials. He has talked about, as John Kelly has talked about, can he send the military after peaceful protesters?
Let's go, boss!
And he's going to sit there unstable, unhinged, plotting his revenge, plotting his retribution, creating an enemies list. I'm going to tell you, my list will be a list of how I address and continue to address the issues that you all are raising this afternoon and evening. It will be a to-do list about how we can impact the American people and lift up the American people and address some of the challenges that we continue to face.
I want to start by asking you, though, for weeks you have been calling Donald Trump unstable, unhinged. You've called him dangerous. You've quoted General Milley recently,
Accurate.
who called him a fascist. Today,
Accurate.
you quoted General Kelly, who said that Trump repeatedly praised Hitler.
Yeah.
But there are tens of millions of Americans right now who have heard all those things, and they don't buy it, or even if they do, they're still going to vote for Donald Trump. He's arguably more popular now than ever. You have 13 days to go. What do you
I
say
disagree
to those
with
voters
that.
to convince them? Because some of them are in this room.
Sure, and I thank you all for taking the time to be here. And you could be doing a number of other things with your time. So this really is proof that we love our country. People are engaged, Anderson, and really want to talk about the issues. And so the issue that you raise, yes, I do believe that Donald Trump is unstable, increasingly unstable, and unfit to
Yes.
serve. And I don't necessarily think that everyone has heard what you and I have heard repeatedly, which is the people who know Donald Trump best, the people who worked with him in the White House, in the Situation Room,
Dude,
in the Oval Office,
this
all
is so
Republicans,
true.
by the way, who served in his administration, his former chief of staff, his national security advisor, former secretaries of defense, and his vice president have all called him unfit and dangerous. They have said
It's his
explicitly
own
he has
people.
contempt for the Constitution of the United States. They
Dude,
have
it's
said
his
he
own
should
people.
never again serve as president of the United States. We know that is why Mike Pence is not running with him again, why the job was empty.
Yeah.
And then today we learned that John Kelly, a 4-star Marine general, who was his longest serving chief of staff,
They chose him.
gave an interview recently in the last 2 weeks of this election talking about how dangerous Donald Trump is. And I think one has to think about, why would someone who served with him, who is not political, a 4-star Marine general, why is he telling the American people now? And frankly, I think of it as he's just putting out a 911 call to the American people.
He is. He's issuing a
Understand what
warning
could
saying,
happen
hey,
if Donald
guys,
Trump were back in the White House.
don't
And
do
this
this.
time, we must take very seriously those folks who knew him best and who were career people are not going to be there to hold him back.
That's a big one.
At least before, there were folks who we know what he would say, but they would restrain him. Imagine now Donald Trump in the Oval Office, in the Situation Room. He who has openly admired dictators, said he would be a dictator on day one. The former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff has said he is a fascist to the core. So I think that when the American people reflect, especially those who are undecided, on who you should listen to, don't take my word for it. In fact, go online and listen to John Kelly, his voice, talking about what he thinks of Donald Trump 2 weeks before the election.
Dude.
Because I think we all know, to your point, Anderson, it is close.
It's
but
really
there are
unprecedented,
undecided voters who
right?
clearly, by being here,
That-
have an open mind, want to talk in a way that
It's
is
like
grounded in issues.
so
and
many
fact.
people
And
in
when they
his
hear
orbit
these facts,
from the
I
first
think
time
it
around have
compels a
said,
lot of
like,
people
wow,
to
don't
be
let this happen
concerned
again.
about the future of our country with Donald Trump at the lead.
You've quoted General Milley calling Donald Trump a fascist. You yourself have not used that word to describe him. Let me ask you tonight, do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do.
Oh.
Yes, I do.
Oh, all right.
And I also believe that the people who know him best on this subject should be trusted. Again, look at their careers.
I think
These are not,
as a
people, with the
rule of
exception, I
thumb,
think of
if you have a presidential
only Mike Pence,
administration
these were
and
not
everybody that
politicians.
works for you says you're a
These are career
fascist
people
loser,
who have
you
served
should probably listen to
in
them.
the highest roles in national security.
Dude, these guys are not
served
like
as
partisan
generals in the
hacks.
military.
These generals work
Were highly
with
respected.
Republicans and Democrats
Talking
alike,
about
dude. They don't give a shit about party.
Person who would
They
be
don't.
commander in chief. Not to mention what we
They
know
care-
and what they've
care
told us
about national
how he
security
talks about
and
the
shit.
military, servicemen and women.
Dude, she
referred
went
to them as
out.
suckers
Dude,
and
she
losers.
broke out.
How he demeans
That's wild.
people
That's
who
bold.
have taken an oath to sacrifice their life for our country. Among them is a legitimate fear based on Donald Trump's words and actions that he will not obey an oath
That's
to support
crazy.
and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Yeah.
He himself has said he would terminate
Dude,
the Constitution of the United
he
States.
said a
And
lot of
wants to
shit,
earn your vote,
right?
to stand
Trump
again
has
behind the
about,
seal of the President
you
of
know,
the United
how
States.
I mean, he's been lying for 4 years, insisting
Standing
he
behind
won the
seal
last election.
Of the President of the United States of America should be in that position saying they want to terminate the Constitution of the United States.
If you could accomplish only one major policy goal that required congressional action, what would it be and why?
Roe v. Wade,
Well,
baby.
there's not just one. I have to be honest with you, Carol. There's a lot of work that needs to happen, but
I think Roe v. Wade.
I think that maybe part of this point that how I think about it is we've got to get past this era of politics and partisan politics, slowing down what we need to do in terms of progress in our country. And that means working across the aisle. I've done that before. We did it around whether it be what we were able to accomplish with the bipartisan infrastructure deal or some of the work that we have done in terms of dealing with gun safety. But we've got to work across the aisle. And it is my commitment to work with Democrats, with Republicans,
Dude, the leftists
with independents,
are probably
to deal
just
with a number
like,
of issues.
they
Whether it be
hate
what
her.
we need to do in terms of housing.
They do, bro.
And creating
bet,
legislation that creates incentives
if we
for
went
that,
to a
what we need
leftist
to
channel
do to
right now who's
reinstate
watching this,
the
they
freedom
fucking
to make
hate
decisions
her,
about
bro.
Her own body and not have her
They
government
do.
tell her what to do.
They hate seeing
Whether
that.
it be what we need to do to actually
whole, like,
invest in a substantial
work with
way
the other
in
side.
the industries of the future.
It's like
in American-based
kryptonite. Their heads are
manufacturing,
gonna explode.
In American-based industries where American workers and union workers have those jobs in a way that is good-paying jobs that gives people the dignity they deserve. All of those areas I plan on working across the aisle and with Congress, including the issue of immigration, which we've got to fix.
Let me ask you, you've talked about codifying Roe v. Wade. That would obviously require 60 votes in the Senate, a majority of the House. That's a big leap. We don't have that yet. If that's not possible to codify it in the House, what do you do?
I think we need to take a look at the filibuster, to be honest with you. But the reality of it is this. Let's talk about how we got here.
I think we need to take a look at the
When Donald Trump was
filibuster.
president, he hand-selected three members of the United States
She
Supreme
came
Court
out with it.
with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did as he intended.
It's real simple.
And now in 20
Get rid of the
states,
filibuster.
we have Trump abortion bans that include punishing healthcare providers, doctors and nurses
Expand
in
the
Texas. Do you
Supreme
know they
Court.
provide for prison for life? For a healthcare provider for doing the job that they believe is in the best interest of their patient? Laws, Trump abortion bans, some that make no exception even for rape or incest. One of the areas I specialized in as a prosecutor was crimes against women and children. The idea you would tell a survivor of a violation to their body that they have no right to make a decision about what happens to their body next? This is what's happening in our country. You all may have heard the stories. Women have died. Women have died because of these laws.
So the fallout, she definitely stayed away from bold, minefield-laden answers. I thought she was pretty vanilla. But I will say this, even when she was evasive without taking the bait and falling into her traps, she never shied away from the question. She didn't go completely out of bounds, rambling off into no man's land, but she definitely was walking a tightrope that whole interview. Like, that was a tough town hall. Anderson Cooper really put the screws to her. And to be honest with you, I'm actually okay with it because I believe her having the screws put to her from that sort of right-wing perspective is kind of important because she's trying to pinch some voters that are like never Trump Republicans. And she knows that a lot of the leftists are not coming back to her because she just can't do an arms embargo on Israel. She can't say that out loud, right? I know leftists think she could, but dude, that would be the end of her fucking campaign. But I thought overall, she did all right, actually.
President.
That she can be in front of an audience and interacting with voters is a win as far as her campaign goes.
I thought her drawing the contrast with Trump, something that she has been really trying to do in the last several weeks that we've seen, where she's gone after him as unstable, unfit for the presidency, saying he doesn't belong behind the seal of the office anymore after he suggested terminating the Constitution. She had a new angle for that tonight, and that's because of John Kelly, his former chief of staff, coming out with his on-the-record comments yesterday saying he met the definition of a fascist and that he's admired Hitler. That was something that she was within seconds of taking the stage. And that first question from Anderson, where she said that, yes, she agrees Trump is a fascist, where she took that moment and tried to really sharpen it and make news out of it from where, you know, she's been talking about this for weeks, but tried to draw that contrast even further for a lot of people, including the people in this audience who are undecided and maybe have not heard those comments or aren't familiar with what John Kelly has been saying. I thought it was really interesting that she came out of the gate and that was one of the first things that she was talking about in the town hall.
Although, John, I do wonder, I mean, I think after 8 years of Donald Trump, people are aware of Donald Trump's persona, his proclivity for controversy, his potential to offend, and the like.
Oh, Jake Tapper.
And I wonder if you think maybe she did too much.
Shut the
of
f***
what
up, bro.
Caitlin's talking about.
I think that is a fascinating question.
Of course
How do
they
you
want to
balance
say
it?
that.
How much time do you have with any voter, whether it's in a TV ad or it's in a town hall? In that time that you have, they're watching you. What is your priority, right? This is how much time I have. What do I want to tell you? How do I want to use that time? Donald Trump is more popular than he's been. He's now, in this race, his political standing is higher in this race at this point than it was in 2016 or 2020.
I disagree with
she does
that.
need to push Donald Trump
Okay.
down. That is a priority. She does need to push.
I disagree that he is more popular now than he was in 2016. Dude, what are they talking about, bro?
Because of their pre-COVID Trump economy nostalgia, or he's
Dude,
done the
that's
job,
some
and I don't know
bullshit
her.
right there,
She
bro.
needs to remind them of that. Then you got to quickly make that pivot. And to Dana's point, I think she did some of it tonight. I was about to say she didn't do enough of it, and then I thought she closed very strongly with the values part. She did the we the American people. But that's what voters ask you, who is she, right? The faith part was interesting. People at home might agree or disagree with it, but she talked about herself. But it's who is your president when hard things happen. And people just don't know it. That may not be fair to her. She got the nomination in July. She's a vice president. People don't know a lot about their vice president. Some of this has nothing to do with her. It's with her job and who she is. At the end, the value part, we get things done, pragmatic. Why does it have to be so partisan? There was some of it there.
Kamala Harris, she has some struggles, dude. Like, her primary struggle is that she's a black woman. And there's nothing wrong with being a black woman, but black women, dude, it's hard, man. Getting white men to vote for a black woman, even if she is the perfect qualified. Like, look what they did with Ketanji Brown on the Supreme Court. She's the most qualified Supreme Court justice on that entire bench. And the minute she got nominated to the Supreme Court, a lot of white dudes were like, you know, DEI hire. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? But Amy Coney Barrett just walked out of an underground bunker after being in a religious cult, has no fucking experience, but the white woman, boom, she's in. Nobody questions her. Or Brett Kavanaugh running around like sweating, having a fucking, you know, some type of like mental breakdown, screaming about how he likes beer. He gets shuffled right in. But a black woman, and they're like, oh shit, you gotta, wait, you're being combative. You know, who are you? We can't trust you, blah, blah, blah. It's like she's a woman and she's black. She's suffering two attacks in American, you know, right-wing land.
That's the connection she has to make to that you can trust me.
Which is why she talks about her middle-class upbringing
to do this.
all the time.
Yeah, it's the personal part is sometimes missing. And again, it may
See,
be
I like
unfair
what
to her,
she's
so you're
doing,
pointing
though.
out different
Look at
standards.
this. Dude, she is there talking to everyone individually. And I think we need to pay attention to this,
She has not taken the time
guys.
as vice president, or they did not let her take the time as vice president.
Because
to more develop
she
her
finishes
brand so that
this
in crunch
thing
time
and
you know
she
who
doesn't
is.
just go
I was
backstage.
listening to the questions from the
And
voters.
you know what I mean?
And a lot of
She's
them centered
talking to
around the
all
same
these
couple
voters
of
individually.
concerns. I mean, they're worried that she's too liberal. They want to know how she might work with Republicans. What would Washington be like with Kamala Harris as president? And you heard her repeat time and time again, she wants to be practical. She likes common sense solutions. She's willing to work with the other side of the aisle. I thought that was actually what she needed to do tonight. She needed to say that a lot in response to some of these questions.
I mean, she definitely accomplished that. She did lean into the fact of like, hey, I'm not here to serve a single side. I am here to try and tackle like a bunch of our problems. And I'll be honest, it's, you know, as much as sometimes I'm like, you know, I like the forceful nature, like when she went up against Brett Baer, I liked that. But obviously you can't do that in a town hall. But what I was going to say, though, is she did a pretty magnificent job of making it very clear that she's not a single agenda person, that she's open, that she will pool her resources, she will bring people together. She's not afraid to take an idea. She's not looking for credit. She's not looking to be the savior that has all the answers, right? She just wants to take substantive action with embracing the other side of the aisle, finding consensus, and working with people to take some steps towards fixing problems. And I really think politically we have gotten out of whack. And it's been in the last 10 years where, you know, you have like somebody like Donald Trump who's like, if you don't elect me, the world's... But it was on the left too. You had Bernie Sanders walking around kind of implying that nobody had the answers but Bernie. And this whole demagoguery kind of idea where people are sort of like proclaiming that they have all the answers and they're the only person who can fix it. I think that's bullshit. I think anybody could go into the presidency and bring some fresh ideas of like ways that we can try to change the country. Now, where it gets complicated is who can get both sides working together to get shit done, or even get their own side. Like, for example, Donald Trump, when he was in office in 2016, they had both houses of Congress. They had the House, the Senate, and the presidency. They had the trifecta. And in 2 years, they didn't accomplish anything. They were fighting. The Republicans were fighting each other. All they really got was that one tax cut. They got nothing else in 2 years because they couldn't even corral their own party to get legislation passed. Now, we have to pay attention to that. And part of that is the failed leadership of Donald Trump because he wasn't good at getting his own people to work together, much less getting both sides to work together. Whereas Joe Biden went into not having the House, and they're investigating him and prosecuting his son, and he is still getting bipartisan legislation, meaningful shit passed. Now, that's the difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Donald Trump can't even get his own party to work together. Joe Biden can get the people who are investigating him to work with him. And there's a big difference there. Now, I believe Kamala Harris, after being the Attorney General of California and being in the Senate, I believe she would actually be good at getting people to work together. I really do. I think she can accomplish more legislatively by a long shot. And again, though, Donald Trump, though, he is not popular because of policy, guys. Donald Trump is popular because he's playing a character of some brilliant businessman for a bunch of gullible people that really are angry. They're angry at the woke, the libs, the Democrats, the whatever, the LGBTQ, the immigrants, and they want somebody who will give word to their anger and say, yes, your anger is righteous, and I'm gonna go break some shit for you. That's what Donald Trump is. They don't give a shit about the policy. They're angry, and he says, I'm gonna go to the people that are making you angry, and I'm gonna make them suffer. And the people are like, yes, please. They want the suffering. It's not about policy. But I thought Kamala Harris, though, she did do a really good job of saying, like, you know what? I'm here for everybody. And I'm here to unite and to work with all people and to end this leftism versus rightism shit. And I really think there's something to be said for that. I think there's something to be said for ending the war between left and right. Now, it's problematic, though, because the leftists are gonna hate her. I mean, I don't know. I bet if Hassan was watching this, he probably had his head in his hands for half of this interview, bro. I bet he's beside himself, dude. He's not gonna sleep for a fucking week because of this interview. I think the leftists are going to be really mad at her.
The thing I think that kind of got her tripped up at certain times was when certain voters were asking to drill down actually on some policy.
Yeah.
And she didn't want to go there, didn't want to get into some specifics. And you might understand why that is, but it's tough for her because I think that comes across as evasive. Voters who are looking.
This is problematic here, though, that they're going to call her out on this for being evasive. She used the term evasive because she wouldn't drill down on policies and shit. And the thing, though, that's really tough is Donald Trump never has to drill down. And I have a fundamental problem with that we live in a political environment where the black woman is required to drill down in order for people to believe she's trustworthy. But a guy who literally said he sexually assaults women, was friends with Jeffrey Epstein, made fun of the disabled. All of the people that work with him have said he's a fascist, don't let him into office. He tried to overthrow the government. He asked the Secretary of State of Georgia to break the Constitution. He threatened to hang his own VP for not breaking the Constitution. He lied about losing the election. He's espoused Hitler talking points. He was, charged with defamation related to sexual abuse. He's an adjudicated sexual abuser. He was found guilty of criminal charges. And he has a whole host of other ones that are legitimate, from stealing classified documents and shit. And nobody asks that motherfucker to drill down. That guy doesn't have to drill down on shit. He can say, drill, baby, drill. Energy, I'm going to cut your energy cost by 70%. Tariffs, 1890s. He says, let's go back to 1798 when slavery existed, by the way, and women couldn't vote, and he's not required to drill down. But they're like, oh, the voters are requiring the black woman to drill down, and she's being evasive. Oh, maybe she's not trustworthy. And that's a fucking problem, boss. I don't like that shit.